Now it becomes who takes over for Lucasfilm. And there are candidates on the board. And there are people like Dave Filoni, who's been huge with the TV shows. There are people like Tony Gilroy, who has done Rogue One, who has done Andor, two of the more successful projects under Disney owning Lucasfilm. And then there's people like Jon Favreau, who has obviously experience directing in the MCU and also, right, experience with The Mandalorian, and someone who has advanced this technology that is so integral for Star Wars with the volume and like these TV shows and eventually this movie, and has been responsible for some of the most iconic characters post prequel and original trilogy. So my question to you, Ricky Flicks, who do you think is best suited to take over Lucasfilm?
So I think the answer is Kevin Feige if you can get him. Right? It's going to be tough. Star Wars is a bigger brand than Marvel. I'm more of a Marvel guy.
Feige is more of a Star Wars guy than a Marvel guy.
Exactly. So I think he's too loyal to leave before Secret Wars and the launch of X-Men. Again, how he got his start in the industry was on those early 2000 X-Men films, right? That's where he was. So I don't think he will leave the MCU until Secret Wars is done and also X-Men are kicked off, right? But if you could somehow just say, hey, take it or leave it right now. Like, this is what you prefer. Like, you always were a Star Wars over Marvel guy. Here's a bigger bag that you're getting at Marvel. Again, it's the same company. Like, it's under Disney, but you still have to poach him. I think he might do it. I don't know if he will. If I had to give an answer, yes or no, I would say no. But you have to at least try.
So I threw this out there on Twitter because everyone was talking about Dave Filoni, and people were saying basically the fans were saying we don't want Dave Filoni. Like, based on like what has happened with the shows, we get it. He knows a lot about Star Wars, okay, but people haven't loved his, I guess his live action treatment. They haven't loved exactly what he's done with the Force. They haven't loved exactly what's happened with some of the Rebels that have come to the screen. But he clearly knows a lot about Star Wars. Do you want that type of guy? Or do you want someone that can create quality projects? That's like the Tony Gilroy versus Dave Filoni argument to me. You know, Tony Gilroy is probably someone that could write the shit out of a lot of these projects, has great taste. Dave Filoni doesn't have the taste of Tony Gilroy, but Tony Gilroy doesn't have like the knowledge about Star Wars and Lucasfilm, that could be, satisfactory to fans.
I would not like Tony Gilroy. I think he's not what Star Wars should be looking for. And I know it's crazy to say that with Andor, but hear me out. A New Hope, when it came out, why did people go see that 3, 4, 5 times? Right? It wasn't just because of Luke Skywalker. It's because of like, oh my God, what am I'm seeing the ship fly across the screen. It's a lot about the sci-fi elements,
Visuals.
the visuals. Tony Gilroy, unfortunately, this guy's known for Michael Clayton, Bourne Identity, and great movies. But those are great for Andor type of projects, like individual, like separate, right? Not to lead a franchise. And I don't think he wants to do that. This guy's 68 years old. He loves to write. This guy, I don't think he's even looking to do that. So for me, I'm not a Tony Gilroy guy as in to lead Star Wars. I love him on an individual project basis. Come back for a season of television if you want. Maybe if we do a spin-off movie again, like a Rogue One, come back. But other than that, no.
Would that lend towards Favreau then?
That does lend towards Favreau-Filoni partnership. I think that's where, if you had to put betting odds, that's probably your favorite in the clubhouse. Some sort of partnership between the two of them running it. The Filoni element that you said makes me nervous. It does. I think people that love Rebels, Clone Wars, the animated shows, the comics and whatnot, they want Filoni, right? And even if I know you said some of the stuff online, I still think if they got greenlit, they'll turn around and say, okay, we got a true Star Wars fan at the helm. He'll bring us back. But the problem is he's a part of the problem right now.
Yeah.
He is. So I do think you have to go outside of your current status. Star Wars has never been lower. You have to get an external hire. You have to. You have to not hire from within because within is not rotten, but it's not working.
There are people that have blemishes on their resumes that are like people are saying are circling this job with not Gilroy doesn't have any blemishes, but he's just not as experienced with Star Wars stuff. Like Filoni, with the live action like Rebels characters, and then you have like Favreau, the recent seasons of The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, he's like somewhat involved in. Like there's like they're not perfect, Favreau is interesting. I've been reading this MCU book, right? And it's talking about Favreau when he was such a big part of the building of the Marvel Cinematic Universe at the beginning because he directed Iron Man. Then he had made Iron Man 2, right? Within like a 3-year period, he made two of those movies and kickstarts the MCU. But he got sick of like the elements of creating a universe and connecting to other movies and other projects. Like he's going to have to do that if you're going to take on Disney Star Wars, And that brings me to Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige was not raised reading comic books. When I read this book, Kevin Feige actually, when he started to work, and eventually started to go under like the X-Men films and then eventually Spider-Man, he threw himself into comic books. He's naturally a Star Wars guy. And remember back in the day, a couple of years ago, he was supposed to be producing his own Star Wars movie. I think that's where his true love is. And right now with the MCU, we're at a point where it's kind of, we're never going to hit Endgame again. That's what it kind of feels like. Brave New World, right? Just had a terrible second week at the box office. It's almost like you have to wait till Doomsday and Secret Wars come out, and then he might jump ship. But maybe he has those movies. He kind of guides them into development and then jumps to Star Wars because he's like, I've done all I can. It's almost like Theo Epstein winning a World Series with the Red Sox and then saying, I've done all I can here. I've done my job. I have to go to the Cubs now. And can he lead the Cubs to a World Series? Can he lead, right, Star Wars back into, the status that it was prior to Disney acquiring it, like that heralded sci-fi status? I feel like it's a new challenge for him, and he might need something that's just different than Marvel right now. I think that is, outside the company, the best fit.
I couldn't agree more. I love the Theo Epstein analogy. That's perfect. Can you guess how old Kevin Feige is, by the way?
53.
He's 51.
Wow. He's a young guy.
I'm not saying he's having a crisis, but this is a midlife crisis. Change. This is bound to happen. Do you not feel like even before Kathleen Kennedy, like we knew she was going to step down, it just felt like Kevin Feige would go to Star Wars at some point, and this was kind of like the end of his tenure at Marvel, Secret Wars, and the X-Men starting, right? There's been talk a little bit about how he wants to make sure everything's fine. That tells me yeah, you're going to be leaving sooner than later. And again, make sure everything goes okay over the next 2 years, but a nice kind of just, hey, pathway out to Star Wars while Secret Wars is under development and whatnot. Look at James Gunn. Did Guardians 3, even though he was going to take over for DC Studios. Right? I still think it's possible.
Same Disney. It's all Disney. So it's like just guide that into happening. And you know what? Honestly, I don't want to assume Feige would become the next president of Lucasfilm, but they just brought back the Russo brothers when you thought they wouldn't come back. Like the Russo brothers, and they haven't had a lot of success in the project they've been doing outside of Marvel. They could easily take on the president of Marvel Studios, and they could be the producer that Feige is and guide the future of the MCU.
That's a great call. I think Marvel would seriously consider doing that.
That's a lot of what ifs, but I could see them stepping up to the plate and being, they are the most qualified people aside from Kevin Feige.
They've accepted their status in Hollywood by coming back to Marvel. Why not go for the full thing and say dedicate the rest of your careers to it?
And then there's also the people and this Marvel book. It's I forgot the people's Nate Moore, Louis D'Esposito,
Linderbaum.
Who was the woman who just left? She does all the visuals of the movies,
Costa, right?
I forgot her name, but she was a big part of the CGI, the post-production of these movies. She's not there anymore. They have a very tight crew. I feel like they would just pick Louis D'Esposito or somebody to take Feige's position. But I think
Victoria Alonso.
Yeah, Victoria Alonso. That's who it was. I think she's no longer with the company though.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but as soon as that starts to dissolve a little bit, Feige might say, "Hey, I'm jumping ship," because that was like his brain trust. That's the people he trusted the most, and it's slowly, unraveling a little bit there at Marvel.